In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a series of reports from the Haven benchmark and convert them into a nice little chart which will show you how you're performing over time. By default, when you run the Haven benchmark or Haven benchmark, it generates an HTML file, which is a report for each run of the system. So this is the way it looks in a browser, and you can see, you know, they vary slightly over time with different drivers and so on, but I wanted to put that into a spreadsheet so I could do some quick analysis of that. And to do that, what I did was I wrote a PowerShell script. So let's just talk about, this is a simple little PowerShell script that goes through and processes all the files in a directory and creates a CSV file. So we specify some parameters, and let me clean up one thing I forgot to delete. There we go. And so this is the, it took me a little while to write this, but it's an interesting little process. Takes two parameters if you want to go down the command line, what directory to use and what the name of the extract file is. By default, it will put out into extract.csv. And you'll need to override this with your username, or just run it from where you are, and by default you could take out the default in there. So the file pattern is that I'm looking for these files here that end in HTML. The trick that I use is I use a hash table of regular expressions, and the other trick that I do is I put each of the keys has a number which lets me order the output in a standardized way every time. So there, each regular expression looks for, you know, like FPS and then the pattern. So if I take a look, I'll split the screen here, and we look at one of the benchmark files. They contain, this is what the HTML looks like. So this one here, it's got the FPS, the score, and then it keeps the platform and the CPU model and the GPU model and so on. And then we get down to tessellation, and this is one where tessellation was disabled. So that's an interesting regular expression issue. So if I come over here, if I can find my cursor, and well, let's just, we come back here. So there's my cursor. So what, the tessellation is the only one that's a little bit complicated, because sometimes the div highlight is there and sometimes it's not. So I use a group which has a question mark, which is 0 or 1. I'm not going to go through all the regular expressions because they're relatively standard, but they're a bit complicated because we had to quote out a bunch of things to get it to work with PowerShell. Quoting in PowerShell is an interesting complication. Then this is a simple regex to given a key to the above regex. It'll just return the name without the key on there. This is fine for if we're doing just a small number, but it's not a good approach if I had to do a large processing through regex, which I've done before, but that's it. So the process is fairly simple. I just, given our base path and our file pattern up above, we say, give me all the, get all the children, get all the child items. That gives me all the file names. Then the file name contains the date and time that the benchmark was run. So this is a regular expression to extract out the year, month, day, hour, minute, and so on. And then we initialize our CSV output, and then we go through. The first thing we need to do is we need to output our headers, which includes the date and time. Then we iterate through these. This is why the order is important, because it's a hash table, so we need a way to go through it. So we get the get enumerator of the hash table, and we sort it based on the property name. Then we go through a for each, and this is where we strip off the regex, and then we write in case we didn't match. And then we output all the matches in order, so that's there. Then we go through the extract loop. The extract loop says for each file, in the list of the file names, we get the file name. Then we do a question. If we don't, we're going to bomb out. And that's the simplest thing to do with PowerShell, is just to exit and say, I don't know what's going on because something isn't matching. But we take a look at, we create the year, month, day as 2 fields. I'll leave that for you to look at. Then we get the content of the file, and then for each line we try and match it with a regex, and if it matches, then we append it to the CSV line. So this sort of makes some assumptions about the order that they are in the file, but that's just based upon that and the output. When we finally get through, we output the CSV file, we do a set content to the path to extract file, and we specify its UTF-8 encoding. And this is an interesting thing. If you don't specify that, it puts out as UTF-16. So if I come over here and I run my PowerShell script, if I take a dir-abstract.ps1, I only have one PowerShell script in there, and I can come in here and just do, this is one of the nice things about PowerShell is you can paste it, and then if you tab, it will do that, and then it ran it. So it created, if I take a look here in the output file, we just created this file, extract. So this file was just created. Now we can go back into Excel. Let's open up a new Excel session, and I tell it to open up this file, extract. It's a delimited file. It has headers, and it uses a comma separated, so we're there. We can finish. So this gives us our nice file. So let's do just a couple of little cleanups. First thing, let's make the first line bold, highlight everything, format, autofit column width. If you highlight a column and do a Control-1, it will bring up the format. That's a date. I want all the dates to look like that. I want all the times. This is a time. I want all the times to look like this. All my FPS is a number, and I want it one column with 1 decimal point, so everything lines up nicely. The score, Control-1, number, 1 FPS, same thing with max FPS. Number, there we go. So this gives us a nice little property. Now this gives us a nice little table. So we can now do something interesting, like we can filter it. Just go into Excel and let's do filter. So notice here's when I had an AMD processor, then I upgraded my motherboard and CPU, and I was even overclocking it for a while, and then I backed off because I was running into some performance issues. So it's got 6 cores, and this is where I had a GTX 960, and then this is where I had only one 1080, and this is finally my second 1080 arrived in the mail. It was a couple of days later. But I can now filter, so I'm only interested when in doing my chart right now of when I had 2 1080s. So let's just go here, here, and here. So now we filtered that down, and noticed most of the time I was running at 4K resolution, but there was one time I wasn't. There were a couple of other things. So I'm going to select, and I'm just going to look at the 4K resolution. So this gives me it's nice and filtered. So now I can select this column, and let's do frames per second for now for that. And then I can insert a nice little chart, and there we go. We can see how much now. There's a whole bunch of things about getting Excel to format it correctly, but this gives us an idea. We can see how the different drivers or how various things that we were playing with affected the performance of the system as a graph, which is something I want to be able to. I find it much easier to see and understand, and I can quickly rerun this spreadsheet, rerun this anytime I want to, and take a look at how FPS and how score is affected and so on by just processing all the HTML files that are generated. So if you like this video, give me some comments, and or give me a thumbs up if you like it, and I appreciate to hear some comments. I'll try and put a link in so you can get the source code. It only takes a trivial amount of time to run. As you see, it's almost instantaneous when it runs, and just with a little bit of playing around with Excel, you can get a chart out and see how the different drivers affect your performance. You could actually, you know, work through this. You could base it up. You could label things with drivers. You could do a whole bunch of capabilities in Excel, but this gets it into Excel in a fast and easy way for you to deal with and do your analysis. Thank you.